Hey everybody, welcome back. I am Matt Williamson, and this is my part two of looking at my collection, my 60s collection, and some of the bins that I've built to house this collection. Now, you see a little bit of this here. This was discussed in part one. This is my oak cabinet that I made with the help of a good friend of mine. This one is something I made myself. I just want to talk about this before we get into the collection. I needed more bin space like this so I could flip through my albums here. And what you're seeing here, these were purchased from Target. IKEA also has a version of these. And you see these normally standing upright, or they're like this bottom one here. They're across the bottom, and you put your albums in this way. But as I like to have my albums where I can flip through them easily, like in a record store, what I did is I bought two of these things, flipped one over, screwed it into the bottom one, and put wheels on it. So this thing does wheel out. The problem is that this is all cheap press wood. So after about 2 months, this thing really started to sag because I didn't have any center support. So you can't see it here, but I've got a block of wood in here to keep it from sagging. I actually did do some reinforcing to it. But this is a really great way to make a bin like this for rather inexpensively, and you just can't wheel it around a whole lot because the weight is so heavy that it might break some of the pressed wood. Pressed wood is pressed wood. Lousy stuff. Okay, we are back to my collection here. We are in the H's here. These are the Hollies. So generally, the Hollies the British releases were quite different than the American releases, even more so than the Beatles, I would say, in some cases. And here's an example of having two different albums released, the American and the British. And these were typically, more singles on the American versions, just like the Beatles. But I do have quite a couple different, I have the variations of both British and American on several of their albums. And I will be doing a video on the Hollies. Oh, here's something. Let me just bring this up. So I did a video on Rhino Records. Seat for Miles is the British counterpart really to Rhino here in the States. And I've got a lot of British imports like this that are British bands that were compilations. This is all the Holly singles really from, I don't know, well, quite a lot of their singles, but there's 22 tracks on this album. So a lot of stuff. So I've got quite a few Seat for Mile comps by them. Let It All Hang Out, the Hombres. Here's a group that is not very well known. Lee Hazelwood produced this band and managed them, I guess. They're called Honey Limited, a good-looking all-girls group. What could go wrong? Well, Ian and Sylvia. So I don't know, does anybody listen to Ian and Sylvia? I've got several albums by them. Some of their stuff is very good, but I haven't been able to get into them too heavily. Been getting some requests for Iron Butterfly. They didn't have much material, really. I think 3 studio albums and a live album. So not a whole lot to talk about, but they've got some good stuff. It's a Beautiful Day, Tommy James and the Shondells. Yeah, Tommy James will be getting the treatment here on this channel because not only some great pop stuff, but his album cuts, particularly in 69 and 70, really start to get, it's more underground sounding. And something, if you haven't heard it, you might like. Okay, we got Jan and Dean. Here's a great album cover. I've always liked this one. Jan and Dean. Not considered a band, a group that had a lot of street cred, but here's Save for a Rainy Day. This is their 1960, whoops, got some glare there. 67 album, I guess. So we've got, moving over here, we've got my favorite guitar player of all time, Bert Jansch. Now he was in the Pentangle, and I've got to figure out how am I going to incorporate him into the Pentangle video. Do I do a separate video on this guy? Do I do just the Pentangle? How do I fit John Renbourn in? I don't know. Do I do it in 2 parts or 1? All these decisions. Here we got the Airplane. This is an album, the first album. This is the one I've gotten autographed by Paul Kantner, Marty Balin, and Jack Cassidy. Small show of like 150 people where I got to sit table side or next to the stage with a table where they brought me drinks all evening. What a wonderful experience. That's how to see a concert. So I did a 3-part series on the Airplane, if you haven't seen it. Here's a little bit more of an obscure band in the mold of Ian and Sylvia, and that's Jim and Jean. So these guys are a little more psychedelic. They had a duo. I think were they husband and wife? Maybe. They had 3 albums. And this is Tom Jones, the one and only Tom Jones. And if that's too much for you, too over the top for you, well, then we got Jack Jones. Okay, here's a group I like to cover when I talk about the Mamas and the Papas. These are the Journeymen. This is John Phillips' group before the Mamas and Papas, folk group. Here's another Canadian band. If you ever heard Kensington Market, this is a really good group. I think they had 2 albums. Good, I guess what you call like pop psych. We've got the Kaleidoscope. Check out my video on them. We've got the Kingsmen. We've got the Kinks. Kind of got the Kinks. So yeah, will I be doing a video on the Kinks? I would love to do one. I will do one. It's just how far do I go? Do I stop right about here? Do I stop here, Lola? Do I go all the way into Schoolboys in Disgrace? I don't know. I still have to make those decisions. Lots of good stuff. Okay, over here as I get up against the wall here, we have got the Knickerbockers. This is a group I think you may be shocked at how good they are. So I would like to do a video on the Knickerbockers. We've got the Left Bank. We've got Gary Lewis and the Playboys. A lot of Gary Lewis and the Playboys. Not a lot of good deep cuts from this group, but lots of albums. We have, here's an obscure one, The Litter, kind of a garagey psych band. I think they had 3 albums. We've got Los Bravos. I've got all 3 of their albums, which the last 2 were not even released in the States, I don't believe. And here's Love, and we even got Love Generation. So they had a couple of albums, kind of that, this is more the bubblegum psych, I guess you'd call it. And then finally in this last bin over here, we got the Love and Spoonful. I've gone into them. Lulu, here's the Mamas and the Papas. Yeah, this group, I just love their stuff. I grew up listening to a lot of Mamas and Papas. And there's a lot of good information out there on them, several books, a couple of documentaries, but I'm going to try to put it all into one place for you when I do my video. And let's stop there. So below here, I'm not going to go into these too much down below. What I've got below here is just, I've got some country, I've got some Christmas stuff, I've got some of my 40s and 50s, the Nat King Cole stuff. So that kind of, in that extra space, is down there. Okay, we're going to go into these albums here in a moment. We're going to go through these a little more quickly. You get the idea of what I've got. I'll try to bring out a couple different bands, and I won't show you everything, but I'll give you a flavor for what I've got and what videos are to come. Okay, we're going to start with Manfred Mann here, and they're one of those groups that had very drastically different releases in the United States. This is a British release, and it'll take me a while to sort some of this stuff out, but this is one of my favorite albums by them. It's Up the Junction. It's a soundtrack from a movie, and their soundtrack work is very good. I'm surprised they didn't do more of it. Didn't translate to hits in the late 60s. And then they had their Chapter 3, which is more jazz. Marmalade. We've got the Marvelettes. Here's a couple cool album covers. Marvelettes. What else have I got here? Oh, Martha and the Vandellas. Here's another great cover. So I do have some Motown to do, and I can't wait to do some of them. Those bands lasted a long time, so the stories are long, the histories are long, and it's always daunting to figure out, well, how am I going to cover that, you know? Paul Muriat, Love is Blue, a couple good covers with him. Always a girl on the cover, it seems. Even a painting of a girl. There she is again. We got John Mayall. A couple Mayall albums. We have David McCallum. Everybody had an album back in those days. How about the McCoys? Do you guys know these albums? Infinite McCoys and Human Ball. They got also into a jazzier direction. Okay, here's, I've got a big stack of Sergio Mendes stuff here. This is some collaborations with Cannonball Adderley. So Sergio Mendes, he's Brazilian. At some point, he was doing a trio, but then he formed Brazil 66. Because the trio, it's a jazz trio. I mean, it's not going to be that popular. Then he did this. Brazil 66, which was the magic ingredient, having female singers singing in, I guess, in Portuguese, or in Spanish maybe in some cases. So some very good albums by Sergio Mendes. We'll be doing a video on them at some point. Here's a good one, Merry Go Round. Emmett Rhodes, this is their first and only album. I bought this sealed, if you can believe it. I bought this back in, this was in the 80s. It was through a mail catalog through Rhino Records or something. No, not Rhino. Goldmine magazine, that was it. And the price is still under. I paid $30 for this, which was a ton of money for me in those days. And I opened it because I wanted to hear it, because that's the only way you could hear these bands. It's to buy them and play them. The Mindbenders, A Game of Love, groovy kind of love. Yeah, they've got Mindbenders, a couple okay stuff. They never made the transition into the psychedelic progressive period. They tried, but then they gave it up. They lasted till about 68. Here we got Smokey in the Miracles. Some really good stuff. Make It Happen. So that is one of the Motown bands I will be doing. And here we got one. This is one of my more requested bands, Moby Grape. So I am working on a video for them later this year. And great story, great music, solid players, and a sad story, unfortunately. Like most of these bands don't end well. Here's one I've always liked, the Modern Folk Quartet. So I do have an affinity for folk music. And this band, they were more than just a vocal group. They became very prominent in that whole hippie scene in Los Angeles. And we've got the Monkees. Well, what do we say about the Monkees that hasn't already been said, right? Well, that's going to be my challenge when I do a video on them. Lots of Monkees, got all their albums. Here's one. This is a signed copy by Peter Tork, Head. Okay, Monkees, Moody Blues. Yes, Moody Blues. We got the Mothers of Invention. I don't have a lot of Zappa. I like this one, Absolutely Free, instrumental album. This one's kind of funny. We've got We're Only in It for the Money. For those of you who don't know, let's just pull this out here. Actually, I can't, it's too tight, I can't even pull it out. But it's the Sgt. Pepper cover, but they thought they'd get sued for it, so they used the inside cover for the outer. That's why you've got two different, let's just pull this out. I want to keep you in suspense. So this is kind of like the Beatles Sgt. Pepper. So the actual cover was supposed to be this. The parody of the Sgt. Pepper cover. Now there was some hand-wringing over this, and I don't know if the record company said, oh, we can't do that, we'll get sued by the Beatles. And so what they did is they made this the cover, which is stupid, and it's not very well known. Bogey is nudging me behind here. What are you doing? I told you to leave me alone for this video, Bogey. Let's put this over here and continue. We've got the Nas. We've got the Mugwumps, another pre-Mamas and Papas group. Of course, I've been through my Nas stuff with a video of them. Here's a guy I love that I can't wait to talk about, and this is Fred Neil. I avoided him for a long time, and just a giant as far as the folk scene in New York, the Dylan period. He was a little bit older. He's one of the great voices of that folk period. Okay, we got Sandy Nelson. You guys know Sandy Nelson? He's a drummer. Lots of albums like this, you know, kind of ventures like, but he was a drummer. So Hits of the Day, The In Crowd, Hang On Sloopy, Treat Her Right, Third Man Theme, tons of albums. And I started buying them kind of because I like the girl covers. You know, I'm kind of a sucker for a good girl cover. And I started getting more and some interesting music. It's just period piece stuff, you know. The New Christy Minstrels, yeah. This is stuff that I had a couple of their singles as a kid. Chim Chimaree was the one. The New Colony 6. Yeah, I got a few of their albums. Got all 4 of them, actually. They only had 4, unfortunately. Chicago band. Good pop band. How about Harry Nilsson? Nilsson is quite a talent. His voice is so good. And he never really... I mean, he's known mostly for getting John Lennon drunk on that Lost Weekend. And that's really a shame because... You know, he had some hits in the 70s, obviously, but his 60s stuff is far better. And his voice is more intact because he kind of destroyed his voice drinking and smoking so much. Two Sides of Leonard Nimoy. Yeah, we got the music from Spock. It's hard to pass these up when you see them in the bargain bins. I don't remember how long ago I got these, but I got to the point where I collected a lot of the stuff I wanted to. Then you start seeing these kind of novelty type albums, and I started picking those up some years ago. Oh, here's a quality band. Orpheus, Boston area band, recorded on MGM, and a very solid writer in Bruce Arnold, who passed away a couple years ago. Okay, Outsiders, The Paupers, The Peanut Butter Conspiracy. They had 3 albums. And the 2 guys that mainly wrote for that band, the 2 band members, they did a lot. It's Alan Brackett and Merrill. What's his first name? Anyway, they did quite a lot of soundtrack work, like this kind of stuff. Run, Angel, Run. So not unlike Davy Allen and the Arrows, Brackett and Merrill did quite a lot too. Here's the Pentangle. So this band... talk about great players. I'm a sucker for some really good instrument players and good instrumentation, and they certainly have got it. So, moving right along. I've already done my very first video. If you want to see Matt Williamson still finding his way, my first 2 videos, I did a 2-parter on Peter and Gordon. If you care to check that out. Be kind, be kind. All right, Peter, Paul, Mary. Now, I do like folk music a lot, and there are a few folk groups from the early part of the 60s, kind of the pre-Beatle 60s. This is really the only group that stayed folk throughout the entire decade. When the Beatles hit, that kind of destroyed folk music, except for these guys. So they had about 8 or 9 albums throughout that decade, and some are very good. All right, we move over to Elvis Presley. I don't have a big Elvis collection. Who doesn't love the King? I do have some of his, this is 60s stuff, basically his soundtrack stuff from the movies he was in. Harem Scarum, here's an example. And these are not very good in my opinion. And it's almost kind of funny to see how bad some of them are because he kind of decided to make the money making movies instead of making really good music. Billy Preston, the most exciting organ ever. Oh, here's a group that I've gotten some comments on and some requests. The Pretty Things. Now, the Pretty Things have quite a history, and that whole raunchy R&B that they started with quickly transformed into the psychedelic period, and they were able to make that transition very well. So much so that they had a separate band called Electric Banana. They went under that title to create music for soundtracks. So I've got a lot of good Electric Banana, which I know it sounds funny, but it's actually quite good. Procol Harum. Got plenty of Procol Harum. Actually, not a ton. They had about 5 albums, I suppose. Gary Puckett and the Union Gap. Another group that doesn't really get any love. This is one of those groups that as you get into the late 60s AM pop, these guys were great at it. And the reason they get no critical acclaim and no love is because they're on the opposite end of the spectrum from bands like Cream. And there are some good deep cuts on all these albums. You're going to find stuff, you just have to look for them. And I'm going to do that heavy lifting for you. Quicksilver Messenger Service. Here's a group that some of you may have heard of, the Racket Squad. 2 albums. This is kind of like the Rascals of the Midwest. They were more soulful, more blue-eyed soul, a little bit on the psychedelic side. And speaking of the Rascals, We got the Rascals here. So I did a 3-part series on them. So check that out. Good stuff. Paul Revere and the Raiders. One of my biggest videos that I've done on this channel is my Paul Revere and the Raiders 2-part series. That surprised me. That, for some reason, this group has struck a chord, and maybe there's just not a lot of information on them, and I was able to give people something, I don't know. But, you know, some really good stuff, a lot of albums, so it's a lot of work to go through them all. So, here we got some Otis Redding. Oh, here's a guy that I love. John Renbourn. So I mentioned the Pentangle, I mentioned Bert Jansch, and this is the other guitar player in the Pentangle. So he had a solo career concurrently with the Pentangle, as did Bert Jansch, and he had about 3 albums in the 60s. Some are just incredibly good. Hey Little Cobra, so we got the Ripcords, we got a lot of Righteous Brothers. Here's a couple cool album covers. This is a favorite album cover of mine. Some Blue-Eyed Soul. Great vocals. Phil Spector never was better. Here's a group that's more my line. The Rising Suns, Los Angeles band, 64, 65, 66, featuring Taj Mahal, Ry Cooder, Gary Magic Marker, Jesse Lee Kincaid, and Kevin Kelly. So Kevin Kelly wound up in the Byrds. It's Chris Hillman's cousin for the Sweetheart of the Rodeo album. But this is kind of roots music. It didn't hit for reasons that it would be obvious that it was not popular, didn't sound popular. But it's interesting nonetheless. Got some Johnny Rivers, Discoteca Go-Go. Okay, what else we got? We got some Tommy Roe, Dizzy. We've got a few Tommy Roe albums, and of course we got the Stones here. What do we say about the Stones that hasn't already been said? Well, I will be doing, oh, I'm losing my lighting here. I will be doing a series on the Stones. How many videos will it take? I do not know. But what a fantastic story. And it looks like, hold on a second here, let me just adjust this. There you go, I have to go brighter. That's the problem. Yeah, the Stones have quite a story, and really several parts of their career. I don't know how far to take it. I typically would go up through the Mick Taylor era. And I think some people make the argument, well, they could have stopped at Sticky Fingers. You know, I don't know. There's all kinds of opinions out there. I consider the Stones pretty much a viable band up until Tattoo You, even though I found that after Mick Taylor left, it wasn't quite the same band. And I think they knew it, but they had to change with the times. Things happen. Here's a group that, this is kind of a rare one, the Ronettes. I've got a compilation album of theirs too that should be in there. But this is also an interesting story that involves Mr. Spector. Okay, are we still on camera? Yeah, okay. Just got a request this week for the Rotary Connection. Are you familiar with them? Another Chicago band, psychedelic band. The lead singer is Minnie Riperton. So she had a big hit in the 70s, and her daughter is Maya Rudolph, the actress, comedian. Got any fans of Billy Joy Royal out there? 3 albums, 1 hit on each. So we got Down in the Boondocks, Hush, Cherry Hill Park. Very easy to tell his story. Okay, Ballad of the Green Berets. And we got Buffy St. Marie. Now, for you folk fans out there, her work is really quite unlike anybody else's. And her albums are very interesting up until, I think this is the one, more electronic. I mean, she was dealing with electronic stuff before a lot of people were. Unfortunately, she's gotten into a little trouble lately. I'll go into that in the video when I do her. All right. Oh, the Sandpipers. Guantanamera. This is a British copy, different cover. I've got my actual American cover elsewhere. I'm working on a video. Sandpipers. So this was a group that had, some of their stuff was sung in Spanish, and it's just easy listening. I got more albums of them than I thought. And we've got The Scaffold. Now their albums are pretty hard to get, pretty expensive. At least this one isn't too bad. That's why I have it. I wouldn't spend too much on The Scaffold, but Paul McCartney's brother. We got The Searchers. So yeah, this will be a fun one to do. So The Searchers really had two periods, their hits period and their non-hits period in the 60s. And they struggled to make that transition. The Liverpool bands did not make the transition to what you would call the folk rock period. By 66, they were pretty much all done, chart-wise anyway. Searchers, The Seekers, Georgie Girl. Couple Seekers albums here. That's more of that folk stuff. I don't know. Some people are into that. We got The Seeds. People have been begging me, can you do a Seeds video? I shouldn't say it, not that many. I do get requests for The Seeds. I find that a lot of their stuff sounds very similar, so there's not a lot of variety in that garage stuff, but kind of an interesting story. The advent of flower power, they say. Shadows of Night. Oh, here we go. Now, you wouldn't think that the Shangri-Las have a lot of really good music to offer a 60s fanatic, but they really have some interesting stuff that you may not be aware of, and I will get to them at some point as well and showcase those. So we even got some Ravi Shankar. We got the Shirelles. We got the Shatman. We got the Shocking Blue. This is a band that could use a little bit of historical perspective. I had the single, actually my buddy Dan had Venus, so we did have that one. Well aware of their work. We got Simon and Garfunkel. We got, of course, Nancy Sinatra. Some very cool album covers. Sly and the Family Stone, Small Faces, Sonny and Cher, The Soul Survivors. And I got their second album, too. Here's a great girl cover, Smell of Incense by the Southwest FOB, with a cover of a song originally done by the West Coast Pop Art Experimental Band. Such a mouthful. Spanking Our Gang. Check out my video on them. Spirit. Yeah, this is one I do get requests for, and I will definitely do Spirit. A group that, there's few groups like them. Another group that had some incredibly good jazz chops. And when you build on a jazz foundation, usually you're going to have some very fine music. And their stuff was actually as good as it was. It didn't sell a lot. Well, that's jazz for you, I guess, right? All right, Spirit, Spirit, Spirit. Okay, let's go, well, one last one here, Standells. This is an LA band that really didn't make its mark with the critics. Were fans too much. I've collected their stuff. Rhino had a couple of compilations. That's how I got into them. And they've got some interesting stuff from that period. Okay, the home stretch here, bottom level. We've got some Status Quo. We've got Steppenwolf. I really do like Steppenwolf. They could use a good going over as well. We've got Barbra Streisand. So I've got, this collection obviously has got easy listening. It's got the Motown. It's got all kinds of stuff like Strawberry Alarm Clock. Just did a video on them. Here's a group that a lot of people probably don't know about and have probably heard of or seen these albums around. It's the Sunshine Company. So as far as pop psych goes, this would be one of those types of bands that fulfill that. They got 3 albums. Well, here we go. The Supremes. Yes, I will do a video on the Supremes. I'm a big Supremes fan. And I've taken the time to go through their albums one by one, pulling out some of the other tracks that are really good. There are a handful of excellent songs that they have. Not a ton. I mean, their best songs are typically the singles. So they have a lot of albums. This is one. Let me just bring one. This is one that I was so surprised at how good this album is. This is the best album, I think. Every song on here is a pretty good song. This is Love Child. and this is 1968. They were always pretty much following trends, but for whatever reason, the songs on this album are all solid. And if you were to ever buy one of their albums, try this one because it's extremely good. So this is their last album, well, with Diana Ross anyway, a box set here of a live performance. This is 1970. And I even have a rarities box set of theirs. So this, I'm somewhat of a completist. And this one has 4 LPs and a couple essential songs, I think, that are some of the best songs ever. One in particular, I would say. Okay, what else we got here? The T-Bones. Oh, here's an obscure one, Howard Tate. If you're into R&B, got a couple albums by him. Oh, here we got The Temptations. So this is another great band, another great vocal group that, so many hits. So what are the deep cuts like? So I'm going to go into those deep cuts too, because they had some really good ones. And they had a slew of unreleased material as well. So I have most of their 60s albums. There might be 1 or 2 that I don't have. And of course you've got the Temptations and Supremes together. They had 3 albums together. One was a television soundtrack called TCB, Taking Care of Business. But you know, Motown was very image conscious. They knew how television would work for their groups. These groups were designed for television at the time, so why not put them on camera? 10 years after, oh, here we go. The original hit, Gloria. So in the States, this is an American copy. In the States, The Shadows of Night had the hit Gloria, and they did not. Hence the title. Somebody asked me just today, you're probably not going to do the 13th Floor Elevators on your channel. Yes, I will be doing the 13th Floor Elevators. Very interesting group, one of the most progressive groups of the entire decade. Their music still sounds like it was just made today in some cases. So they will get the Pop Goes the 60s treatment. Okay, here's a band I really, really like. Traffic. So that's also kind of a start and stop story. They didn't have a lot of material. You know, these band members, in and out of bands, coming and going. Nobody could make up their mind. Hope this album doesn't belong here. It's a Cream album. All right. Here we've got another obscure band, the Twilights, an Australian band. Extremely good pop music. Here's another rare one, a psychedelic group called the Underground Sunshine. United States of America, another kind of obscure one. We got the Vanilla Fudge. I don't have all of their albums. Got to get a couple more of those. Velvet Underground. This album, I got into the underground when I was in college, and I suppose maybe like a lot of us did. Nobody else sounds like them. Okay, then we got a very big collection here of Ventures albums, and I won't pull them all out, but you know, some very good album covers. And if you're into this kind of music, they left the surf stuff behind rather early. I've made the mistake of calling them a surf band a couple times on this channel, only to be corrected by real surf enthusiasts. So they really did, they had Play the Guitar with the Ventures, and they were doing hits of the day. They were cranking out 3 albums per year. And then we started getting the cool girl covers. And perhaps the most popular girl cover, if I can find it here. I think I've already passed it up. Well, you get the idea. So the Ventures. Yeah, that's going to be a story to untangle. Still going here. Ventures, Ventures, Ventures. The Vogues. 5 O'Clock World. Yeah, another easy listening group from the mid to late 60s period. But still some good stuff. A couple of girl covers. Can't go wrong. Whoop, that's not a girl cover. Put that one back. The Walker Brothers. So the Walker Brothers occupy an interesting spot in pop music, having gotten an LA band that was more popular in the UK than in the States. But a couple good songs via the vocal pipes of Scott Walker. Dee Dee Warwick, Dion's younger sister. I think she's younger sister. Yeah. And a bunch of Dion, Burt Bacharach. This was one of my parents' albums. They were Andy Williams fans. Andy Williams Christmas, Mason Williams, Nancy Williams, Stevie Wonder, Uptight, Everything's All Right. Yeah. And then we get over to the Yardbirds. I've done a video on them, so you've seen these albums, if you've seen those videos. Here's a very good group that could use some love, and that is the Youngbloods. Really good group. Good singer, decent players, good songwriting. More Youngbloods. Zager and Evans, 25-25. The Zombies. Got a good Zombies collection here. Also have a video on them that I go into those. Girls with Guitars. So here are my various artists. I've gone into some of the stuff with my Rhino video I just recently did. The Psychedelic Snarl. This is Bam Caruso. This is a British label. Had a long series of psych music and like freak beat. The Psychedelic Trip. This is probably my favorite. This is a C for Miles comp. They had 3 or 4 albums. 4 albums maybe, but it's on 3 CDs. Highly recommended. And then there's a series like this, Highs of the Mid-60s. This is regional stuff, all different parts of the country. Here are all my Rhino collections. Got the Woodstock stuff. And then I've got my soundtracks. I forgot that these were back here. So the soundtracks for me are a lot of fun, and I listen to them pretty regularly, actually. You got Dean Martin, The Silencers. So a lot of fun stuff, very much period stuff. Here you got Anne Margaret, Pleasure Seekers. How can you not buy that album? How can you not? Dr. Goldfoot and the Girl Bombs. So yeah, all the goofiest stuff. The goofier it is, the more likely I'm going to probably pick it up. Valley of the Dolls, Riot on Sunset Strip. That's what the Standells, actually. Easy Rider, Wild in the Streets. Oh yeah, Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf, West Side Story, all the biggies. So these are things I bought when records were kind of going out of vogue and you can get them for like $1. Some of these I actually got for 10 cents each. I came home with 60 albums. I spent $6. Would you believe? Girl from Uncle, you know, so Bonanza. So a lot of TV stuff back in here. Even Bob Crane on drums. Hogan. So yeah, we got some fun stuff. And Mission Impossible, this is Lalo Schifrin. So lots of fun stuff. Let me just push this back. Oh, here's I'm actually using this space for my 45s. Got a ton of stuff here, all kinds of different things. I don't have a lot of 45s that I've collected. I've probably got to get rid of some. Here's one of my little boxes. That is a quick overview of my collection. On the other side of the room, way over there, I've got stuff which is my 70s and 80s stuff. So maybe we'll look at that at some other time. And hope you like that. This will give you an idea of some of the stuff I will be doing in the future. And I don't mind fielding any requests, so feel free to send them my way here at Pop Goes the 60s.